Hello and welcome to another episode of Sports and Songs Podcast. I'm your host, Dan. Today's a bonus episode, sports trip to Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm going to give an overview of a trip I recently took to Cincinnati, Ohio. It took place April 2023. Sports related, so I figured the podcast would get a kick out of this. Now, in Blue Ash, Ohio is the Crosley Field Replica. There's a field that's built and set up at a sports complex in Blue Ash, Ohio, just about 20 minutes north of the city of Cincinnati. They rebuilt the old Crosley Field as a replica here on this site. The stadium Crosley Field was used from 1912 to 1970 in Cincinnati as home of the Reds, before they came in and used Riverfront Stadium for the Reds and the Bengals to play. After being demolished after the 1970 game, a group took some effort to build a replica. This was a very famous ball field in Major League Baseball in the old timers back in the day, and a group of people had money and funding to set this up and build this, and they also made a replica of the scoreboard. The scoreboard there, as you can see, the actual listings of the names of the teams playing against each other, along with the scores and the pitchers that were used that game, was a lock from the very last game that was used. And so that's still the same from 1970. They used the scoreboard, of course, for runs in the inning for games that are held there, amateur and senior men's baseball play on this field there. But they kept 400 of the original seats, 400 seats from the old stadium. Looks like they've been refurbished and updated, but they brought over, when they built this in 1988, the original seats. Now, each year they have an old-timers game at this facility also in Crosley Stadium. They built this in 1988. And there's a plaque with the autographs of all the people that have played in the old-timers games. There's Johnny LeMaster. I kept a photo of that for a buddy of mine, Mr. Sanzeri. He knows Johnny LeMaster personally. I thought he'd get a kick out of that. This is a 37-acre sports complex that there's various Little League fields, tennis courts, swimming pool, and everything there. But it's a full-size field here to the exact dimensions of the old Crosley Field in Cincinnati that was used for so many years. Now, this was the only field that had a 4 to 6 foot incline in the outfield. There was no warning track. The outfield just had an incline. As you went up to the wall, it let the outfielder know you were getting close to the wall, so it had an incline. Now, the home field team outfielders knew that, so they knew how to play that, but it really caused a lot of grief for the opposing teams back in the day, making it up that hill, trying to track a fly ball. So the dimensions in the outfield are the same. They brought in some seats, and there's plaques out there for the annual game that's held every year. It is a serviceable field to this day that is played on. I was there, got some photos of it that day. The field was shut down, but wanted to stop in and get some photos. There's Pete Rose, once again, Johnny LeMaster. A lot of people played there. It's a very famous field that's listed as number 36 in the book called 101 Baseball Things to Do Before You Strike Out. Little known places to visit. And so that's Crosley Field. That's about 20 minutes north of Cincinnati. We ended up going to a ball game in Cincinnati at Great American Ballpark. That's the home of the Reds. It's the 20th year anniversary of Great American Ballpark. Like I said, they used to play at Riverfront Stadium for 30 years on the river. There is the river in the background. Reds were playing the Phillies that day, and we had a couple former Twins at the game. I got a picture of former Twins. Left fielder there is Jake Cave. Jake Cave, former Twin, standing in left field. And then hitting here is Spencer Steer. Spencer Steer, it's a new third baseman for the Reds. He came up through the Twins farm system and was moved over on a trade that the Twins got Tyler Mahle in exchange for. So here's some shots outside the stadium and inside the stadium. I went around and got some various photos from the ballpark. On the back side of it, once again, you can see the river. The river is a shot to right field over the stadium. Landing in the river would take about a 580-foot home run to right to land in the river. I think it's been done. A couple players, I think, have done it out of bounds or on the air, on the fly. But here's some various shots of the stadium. They were playing the Phillies that day. Great weather, great ballpark. In fact, it just turned 20, and so it's still fairly new, but I thought it was a good time. Now, they've also got a lot of history there at the ballpark, a lot of history. The old former Reds, good teams from the 70s, were known as the Big Red Machine. There's a room called the Machine Room. They have a whole history on the Big Red Machine. There's a picture there of Ted Klaczynski, Cesar Geronimo. I just grabbed some photos quick. Joe Morgan and Pete Rose there. Joe Morgan again. Pete Rose and Johnny Bench. These guys are big. Johnny Bench there too. The fans in Seattle love their Reds. Pete Rose and Johnny Bench. There's George Foster, are basically immortals in the town. There's the infield. The infield of the Big Red Machine. That was also popular and very, very good. That 76 team, many thought. And there was the Big Red Machine 2. The Big Red Machine, Pete Rose. That 1976 team, I think, was the team that was maybe perhaps the best that baseball has ever assembled. Many think it was a hitter's row, murderer's row for the Yankees in 27. But that Reds team had some phenomenal players. The Big Red Machine, the room was called the Machine Room at the ballpark. Shows a lot of history from those teams in the 70s. Very, very good. Now, what I didn't know, the current manager of the team is David Bell, current manager of the Cincinnati Reds. Now, David Bell's father is Buddy Bell, and his grandfather is Gus Bell. All three played in the majors. Now, that card that I'm showing is a card that I had from it was a 1976 baseball card showing father and son big leaguers, with Gus Bell playing for the Reds, Buddy Bell with the Indians. A pretty rare father and son duo at the time. They made a card out of it. Well, now it's more common and fairly more common, but I pulled the card out and got a picture of the front of it there because now you got three generations of baseball. Gus Bell hit for the cycle years ago. David Bell, when he was playing in the majors, also hit for the cycle. I think they're the only two grandfather and grandson combination to hit for the cycle in a Major League Baseball game. Buddy Bell on the back of this card wrote a note to his father in 1969 while in Sarasota, Florida for training camp, saying that he was so depressed he wanted to quit baseball. He called his father Gus, told him his feelings. It says here on the back, if you can read it, Dad says, "Stay there, I'll be right down." He took him 19 hours, and he was there. He calmed me down, made me feel like new, and he returned to my career. He was about to quit. Buddy Bell was about to quit, but whatever success he had, he owes to his father. Thank you, Dad. It says, signed, Buddy Bell. Well, Buddy went on to play and manage in the major leagues. And so Buddy Bell, the manager, and his son David Bell, now the current manager, is another father-son manager combination. That's also fairly common. But that's that 1976 card that I dug out of my collection there as I found that David Bell, the current manager of the Reds, is tied into that successful baseball family there in the Queen City. Once again, my name is Dan. This is a bonus episode of Sports and Songs podcast covering my sports trip to Cincinnati, Ohio. Thanks for listening.